Good morning, everyone. It's Justin once again. I told everybody I probably was gonna get to a couple videos this weekend. So I'm gonna do one on ventricular rhythms. I'm going to apologize ahead of time because this is going to be a lengthy video because there is a lot to learn about ventricular rhythms. And this stuff is going to kind of jump around a little bit, so kind of try and bear with me, making sure I've got everything I need. So when we talk about ventricular rhythms, we're talking about wide rhythms, or rhythms with wide QRSs, and either slow or fast. There are two different types of VT, and we'll talk about both of them, and I'll show you both of them. One is monomorphic, mono meaning one. Two is polymorphic, poly meaning many. So one of the big things that you have to differentiate from, and really when you're treating it from an ACLS perspective, it doesn't really matter. But it's good to know because sometimes, and they often call polymorphic VT torsades, and I don't know why, because it's not, and I'll show you why it's not. But it's good to be able to know, torsades versus polymorphic VT, and what makes torsades torsades. Torsades means twisting of the points in Spanish. So we'll go ahead and I'll start with some rhythms here. As always, if you guys have any questions, post them in the comments and I'll try and answer them. So this is just how these printed. I tried to print them off in as well as I could, but this is pretty simple. These are bigeminy PVCs. Bigeminy meaning every other beat. Okay, so we've got a sinus beat here and a PVC here, sinus beat here and a PVC here. Okay, and and you can see they go all the way across. So I know somebody out there is gonna be like, that's not a PVC. Yeah, it is. So that, if you look, is almost 0.18. And if you look, that is 0.18 or 0.08. That right there is how you differentiate a PVC from a normal beat. Okay, so you always measure the QRS of the beats if you're curious. Okay, that's pretty simple stuff. Okay, IVR or idioventricular rhythm. Okay, these can be mistaken for junctional rhythms, and they are, in a sense, because the atria is not firing, are junctional rhythms. Idioventricular is usually a very slow rhythm, and the QRSs are usually very wide. So you can see that's almost 2 boxes, and I'm measuring to that point right there because that's where I think the QRS ends and the ST segment begins. But this is a very slow rhythm, and it's not, it's regular. You can see it's regular, and it's very, very slow and wide, and there is no atrial activity right there. Okay. Okay. I'm going to skip that one for a second. This is AIVR. This is accelerated idioventricular rhythm. It's the same thing as IVR. It is just faster. There is no atrial activity here. The QRS is wide and bizarre. It's regular. And that is, in a nutshell, IVR. Or AIVR, I'm sorry. All right. Okay. All right. So moving on to, we saw earlier, we saw bigeminy PVCs. Okay. Now we're going to look at trigeminy. Tri meaning every third. So when you're charting this, like I told you guys before, it's good to chart the first 3 beats before the ectopy and the last 3 beats after for obvious reasons, okay? Because if you're just looking at this as an outside person, you're just be like, oh, those are PVCs, because you can't see the rhythm. But I know, because I cut this one off by accident, that it is trigeminy PVCs, because this would have been the 3rd beat for 3. So this would be 3 PVC, 1, 2 PVC, 1, 2 PVC. So it's every 3rd beat's a PVC. That's pretty standard. You can either see these unifocal or multifocal. That's it on that. This one's a little hard to follow too, because it's not the whole strip, and I'm sorry I can't get the long strips in there. But so this is every 4th beat is a PVC. So this is gonna be beat 3, beat 4 PVC, beat 2, 3 PVC, 1, 2, 3 PVC. So every 4th quadrigeminy PVCs. Okay. A little bit of clinical correlation for that. Just for people that want to know, if you got patients who are having these series of PVCs like this, trigeminy, quadrigeminy, bigeminy, it's important to try and correlate their perfusion, meaning, so if you look at this bigeminy strip up here, this is 6 seconds, so we can do 2, 4, 6, 8, so we can say that's 80, okay? But if you've got them on a cardiac monitor, and you also have their SpO2, your SpO2 probe on, it's detecting your perfusing rhythms, okay? So you may see a pleth line one time here, but not here. And you might see it here, but not here. And then if you palpate their pulse, you might notice that they are at a rate of 40 instead of 80 like you thought. And that's because sometimes those PVCs aren't perfusing. That's not all the time. It's just sometimes. And when I was working in telemetry, it was not uncommon for me to get a phone call from a nurse panicking because the patient's heart rate is 40 and we were charting that it was 80 or 90, and the EKG monitor says it's 90, but their pulse is not correlating to it. So just remember that just like you can have pulses in VT and you can have pulseless VT, you can also have pulseless or perfusing or non-perfusing beats in this, okay? Not really something that is going to affect you in the field, but it's just something good to know, so that way if you're correlating with the patient's manual pulse, you can figure out if these are perfusing or not, and know and understand what you're looking at. Okay. So, like I said, these are wrong page. There you go. All right. So, looking at polymorphic and multifocal, or multifocal and unifocal PVCs, as we talked about earlier. The difference in these, and this is just lead 2. If you had another lead, you'd be able to see this better. You got sinus rhythm here. Okay, that's their underlying rhythm. Okay, then you have this really wide beat here and here. And what's happening is these PVCs are coming from different areas of the ventricle. That's what multifocal means. It's coming from a different area of the ventricle. So you've got this wide beat here and this wide beat here, and these are both PVCs. Okay, they're both premature ventricular contractions. And this actual strip is quadrigemini multifocal PVCs. But again, you don't have the other beats out here to be able to correlate that. But that's what this was, okay? Multifocal PVCs there. And basically, like I said, that just means they're coming from different places in the heart. Now, polymorphic ventricular tachycardia. Okay. So most of us are used to seeing VTach. Hold on. Gotta find it. Look like that. Okay. This is also VTach. And it looks like, if you look at VFib, it looks like a really coarse VFib, but it's not. Okay. The polymorphic, like I said, means it's coming from two different places, okay, or more than one place. And you can see that these actually come, these actually kind of get bigger and smaller. A lot of people would say that this is torsades, but that is actually what torsades looks like. Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute, but just to look at that, that's actually what torsades looks like. That is a very defined torsades. That is what we call polymorphic ventricular tachycardia. Okay, you're going to treat that just like you're going to treat any other. But I wanted to show you what polymorphic and monomorphic VT looked like, because this is something that people confuse for either VFib or torsades. And it's not, like I said, it doesn't change your treatment algorithms, because you're either going to treat it with electricity or you're going to give them drugs, one of the two. And if it's pulseless, you're going to start CPR. So it's just something, good little tidbits of information to know. Okay. Unifocal PVCs, pretty standard. Okay. They're all the same. They're coming from the same point of the heart. Okay. What this is a patient who has AFib underlying, and they've been having a lot of PVCs. Okay. And we talk about R on T phenomenon, and basically what happens in an R on T PVC is the heart doesn't get its refractory period like it's used to. Okay, so it doesn't get that little break between the T and the next P. Okay, and what ends up happening is that PVC ends up firing on the T wave, and that causes almost all the time will cause the patient to go into polymorphic, maybe into torsades. And what this is this is actually a combination of both of those, okay? Because you can see the twisting of the points here, okay? And that's why I put two on this, because you can see it a little bit better. But you can see in the bottom lead the twisting of the points, okay? And you can see down here where it kind of gets it looks a little polymorphic, but it's about the same. This is torsades. You're going to treat this with electricity, probably give them 2 grams of mag. And that's how we would have treated that in the hospital as well. I've actually seen this happen in person. I had a patient who had multi-PVCs, and as nurses, when tele calls you and tells you that your patient's having a ton of PVCs, don't ignore them, because there's physiological reasons that somebody's having a lot of PVCs. It could just be that they have a sick heart, and that's 9 times out of 10. Their heart is sick. But the question is why are they having all these PVCs? 9 times out of 10, if you run cardiac markers on these people, they will come back all jacked up. And what I mean by that is their potassium will be off, their sodium will probably be off, their magnesium will be off, their potassium will be off. All that stuff will be off the chart, because what's happening is the heart's getting upset because it doesn't have the nutrients that it needs to to operate properly. So, yeah. So when this happens, usually it's because of an electrolyte imbalance, and this is caused not by the, well, it can be, you can say it's caused by the electrolyte imbalance, I suppose, but what it's really caused by is the PVCs that come from the electrolyte imbalance. Usually, when a patient does this, you can usually get them out of it. If you can catch this on a strip, that person will have bought a pacemaker probably. Actually, probably they will buy a pacemaker. But that is in a nutshell. That is torsades. Okay, and I'll just go through this strip one more time so you guys can see it. Okay. All right. This is a patient who was having frequent runs of VTAC, and they were in an underlying sinus rhythm, and they were having frequent runs of unifocal VT, and you can see they had a 4-beat run and a 3-beat run. That's not really considered remember I told you have to have 3 consecutive beats for it to be a different rhythm. So because there's 4 and there's 3 there, you can call that runs of VTAC, because that's what that is. That wouldn't just be PVCs. And that's kind of the point that I wanted to make with this strip. So if you've got 3, in this case we have 4. If you've got 3, it's VT. If you've got 2, so if you just see that is what's called a PVC pair. Okay. And you can also, if they had 3, you can also call it a triplet too. But it really is, it's a run of VTAC. And these people too, you want to watch them because their electrolytes are probably off, and they need, they're gonna need some kind of electrolyte replacement, whether it's potassium or whatever. But usually that's what causes that. So this is a different type of ventricular tachycardia. This is a slow VTAC, okay? And it looks kind of messed up, and that's why I chose the strip, because it doesn't look like VT, because you're used to seeing it like that. But this is actually VTAC. It is just slower. Usually your VTs will run like in the 180s to 220 range. But you can see them as slow as 150, and I have seen them as slow as 150 before. Again, you're going to treat this all the same. This interpretation is not going to change your treatment at all. Okay. This is what you're used to seeing, which is the VT that is fast, wide, bizarre looking. Okay. Nothing really to show there. And then you have your VFib. So your VFib, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. I'm not going to hit on VFib and the other strip that's behind it very hard, because it's pretty self-explanatory. This person needs CPR, defibrillation, and ACLS. So apparently there was some more VT behind that. I didn't realize it. So this is going to be polymorphic VT, and it's slow. So that's what that is right there. It's just a different type of VT, multiple focals. So it's coming from many different places of the heart, but it is slower than normal. And then that is another strip of VTAC that you will see, and this is usually what the rhythm generators look like, to be honest with you. That's 9 times out of 10 that's what the rhythm generators look like. But just like everything else is different when you're looking at it when a patient's connected to the monitor, because every patient is different. Oops. Okay, so asystole. All right, this isn't it's listed in the ventricular rhythms because there's standstill. Okay, this is asystole, obviously flatline. Okay, not going to go into a great big deal about that, but there's no electrical activity in the heart. Okay. All right, this is one of my favorites. So this is what we call primary ventricular standstill. Okay. Your EKG book probably calls it something different, and that's fine. It's all the same. It is what it is. What happens with this is the patient, in this specific case right here, this patient probably they're getting a pacemaker because they need one, but they're probably not up doing anything, and their heart just decides that it wants to beat slow. But what happens is you can see these, you see the P waves before the QRS here, and then you just see P wave, P wave, and P wave and QRS. So basically what happened was this dropped 2 QRSs, okay? Now most of you guys are going to say, well, how come that's not a second degree heart block? And the reason this isn't a second degree heart block is because you see that it drops more than just once, okay? And it doesn't get longer drop, it just drops, okay? So this is what that looks like on a monitor. And in extreme cases, which is the strip below it, you'll have nothing. If these people are symptomatic, pacing usually helps them. But I mean, that's about what, that's what you'll see with primary ventricular standstill. Okay, this is true. Like, there is no ventricular activity, but there is atrial activity, primary ventricular standstill. So again, you see the P waves. Okay, P waves going across. There's no QRS, there is a P wave, okay? Again, this person is treated with CPR, maybe paced, if you have that capability, and work them like a cardiac arrest, because that's what that is. Sometimes you'll see runs of this, and I have, where the patient will just show this for like 3 seconds, and then they'll go back into a sinus, kind of like this guy did, but a lot longer. So that's all I've got. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Like I said, doing this more for my paramedic class because I've got the tele experience, and I'm trying to help everybody understand EKGs. So when we go back, everybody has a little bit of a grasp, and I hope I'm not confusing anybody. Like I said, if I am, just leave me a comment and I'll try to clarify it. Thanks. Have a good one.